Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August Water, Sewer, and Engineering Committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. And Kathy, can you call the roll?
Sure.
Thank you.
Beth Greenwood, Matt Yetto, Councilmember Moskowitz, Clark Henry, Aaron Cassidy, Dorian, Dan Bulk, and Councilmember McPartland.
Thank you very much. And I will take a motion to approve the July 3rd committee meeting minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I was not present for that meeting, so I'm going to abstain from voting on the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. I see we have a few members from the community here, so we'll start with a very brief public input period. I just want to remind everyone that the code of conduct that we follow at our town board meetings applies to all public meetings. So we ask that comments are professional, respectful, and related to agenda items. If anybody would like to speak.
I'll just do an introduction. I'm Joseph Drake, I live at 914 Broman, and I'm here primarily just to listen. I know you do these meetings regularly. I've watched you online, but I haven't sat in for a meeting. Today's a beautiful day. I thought I would stop out and say hello to everybody and give a listen and see how the committee meeting is progressing.
And my name's Nora Galto, and I'm just thankful that the resolution was passed unanimously, and I'm here to listen also. Appreciate all your efforts to mitigate some of the issues.
Dan Sexton, Dale Estates. As Ormage, I'm here as well to listen and see how things progress as far as getting to some type of resolution that is minimal by the residents.
I'm Gail King. I'm here to listen and learn. I recommend that you listen to these people and use some of their input. They're very knowledgeable. They're willing to help. I think we could all benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Elena reached out to me yesterday. I believe she's in court this morning. Matt, you wanna-
Yeah, she left at 8:30.
Yeah.
She was here, she had to leave, but, yeah, so, these are just standard outside user agreements for sewer. One is for 722 Pierce Road, an existing home with a septic system that, needs replacement, so they'd rather just tie into our sewer. I have all the information for that, and I forwarded it to Elena, and she'll be able to add that to the agenda. The other one is one that's been on, it's the 2845 Athletic Road. This outside user agreement's been on our agenda for months. Based on what Elena said at the previous meeting, they finally have everything that they need to move forward with that one as well.
So no longer tentative.
No longer tentative.
And that's the same situation, right? The septic needs to be replaced.
Yeah, these are existing homes. Yep. It's an existing home that the cost to replace the septic quite a bit, and there's been public sewer that's been installed within the last 5 years in the road there. The next item is a fence easement agreement for 1905 Union Street. This has been on for quite a while, and I believe this one, particularly because I have Elena, that one is ready to go as well. And the next item is it's listed as fence, but it's actually a shed easement agreement for 248 Mohawk Trail. Everybody wants to put a shed partially in one of the drainage easements. Spoken to Ray about it. He doesn't seem to have an issue. So I think we can move forward with this one as well. This would just be a standard easement agreement that we have, that if we ever have to move the shed, it's up to the property owner to move the shed if they be work within that easement. I have one additional outside user agreement that came up yesterday. It's for 851 Ravine Road. But as we mentioned at the last meeting, some of these properties have significant drainage impacts. This is a vacant lot which they want to build a house on, but there are significant drainage concerns. So this may not happen. but at least I want to show the outside user agreement on the agenda in case we do end up needing it.
You said it was a fence.
It's an outside user agreement for the sewer. Oh, so yeah. This is a house that's right at the edge of our sewer district. It's a property at the edge of our sewer district. And they want to tie in the force sewer. I don't have an issue with the connection. It's more so the drainage that is associated with the project. We want to make sure that they address all of our concerns, so it may be a longer period for review and before we even allow them to build a house on that property. So it may not be necessary to do the agreement this month, but at least have it on the agenda in case we need it.
Are they able to come in?
They applied.
They apply, okay.
That's as far as I know. I flagged it as soon as they came in because they were not in the sewer district. So then we started looking a bit further and saw that it's on a steep slope with housing down below that already has concerns about drainage.
They're already aware of our concerns though during the drainage and. you've already talked to them, or-
This just happened yesterday.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I believe, engineering tech in their office was going to reach out to the engineer.
Yeah, we did reach out. We're talking through that with the engineer, but it's plans that will be acceptable.
Excellent.
To the council. We're in the middle of that.
Next item, engineering, just an update on our light service inventory. Josh was in here when he left. Working with Josh, the new IT director, to set up our website so they can accept online input from the residents, so that when we do send out a postcard, they can follow the link and help populate the database of the services in the homes, whether they're copper or lead or other types of pipe materials. So I couldn't do this part until we had the website set up, so I don't want to overload with people calling just because they get a postcard. I want them to be able to just resolve that, or give us the information quick and easy on a form online. We'll take calls that, obviously, but if someone in the middle of the night or after hours wants to go do their survey, they can enter the information immediately.
So we have a link off the website to a different page, or is there gonna be a
It's gonna be-
code on the card?
Yes, so it's gonna be a link on the website and a QR code on the postcard, so that they can, with their phone, just take a picture of the QR code and paste it right to that website. So on the website, it's gonna be just pull down menus, and they can pick and choose a few simple questions. And then also upload a picture of their pipe as well that they like.
Okay, and what are we gonna do for some people that are not tech savvy, right? Cause.
That's the ones where we'll get phone calls and we can schedule an appointment to go in.
Okay, so then we would have to go out to those residents and
Mhm.
take the picture and examine the line.
Yeah, we wouldn't even necessarily have to take a picture. We would just get the information off of just a visual inspection. It's a pretty simple process. Just the pipe that comes into the wall.
Right, but some people aren't very tech savvy.
No, I'm just saying, we could be in and out of the house within 5 minutes and
Yeah,
be longer to schedule the.
exactly.
Is there a timeline for the, except you're asking for the website link and for the postcards to go
I
out?
started, I hit him when he walked in the door on Monday, so. His office in our little suite there, we've been sort of monopolizing his time. So I'm hoping within early next week we'll have, it's not a very detailed page, and we're using Scotia's model. They've all the municipalities have been looking and seeing what the other ones are doing and refined over the last few months. So
What's the time frame on this?
October, we can get everything done. We've done most
That's
of
an
it.
aggressive time frame, I think.
I think we have to have data to the state by.
We have a lot
We've
of
been
the,
working on
we've been working on it.
Yeah, that's-
Months.
This is to get the information that we don't have based on all
Record
the record
plans.
plans.
Okay, so this is for areas in the town where you don't have records, right? So houses that were built in the 80s, 90s, we've got all that information. You don't need any of that information.
Yeah, 70s even.
Am I gonna be getting a postcard? I mean, my house is built in the late, 80s.
No, you can call to make an appointment, Bill, if you don't.
No, that's, wondering, like, okay, so I'm not even getting, we're not even sending out postcards to those residents.
Yeah.
So we're just targeting the ones that we need to target. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
The summer intern's been working on this for a while, right?
yes, yeah. So this is our last big chunk of information that we want to get. To fill in some of the holes that we have. We're going to assume that any house that was built in the 20s and 30s at one point had a lead service. If we can, through this process, pull those properties off the list because they've been replaced, we can identify that it's copper or some other material, then we would remove them from the list. So we'll have a complete set of data for the state, but we just want to refine it best we can, and we'll continue refining it. It's a sort of a revolving list.
Right.
As we get more information, we'll keep updating it.
Thank you.
Let's see what else. The water and sewer maintenance, we have the tentative resolution to appoint, a maintenance worker, or we have, currently 3 positions that are open and have been open for quite a while. I've got a few applications that I'm trying to schedule a few interviews coming up here, for the next board meeting. If any of those applicants look good, we'll put a name and move forward. The next item is an excavator repair. I'm working with a contractor to evaluate our excavator. We have we believe main drive motor that is not working on one of the sides. And it could be as much as 35,000, at least that part. But working with a contractor that we would work with in the past, he believes it may not necessarily be that major part, so he wants to do some analysis and try to figure out what the issue is before we sink $35,000 into a piece of equipment. It's a very crucial piece of equipment, but still $35,000, if we can do it for far cheaper, that's our goal. So,
You know what the cost of the excavator would be? I mean, an entire excavator?
I think
that
Marty just put
size,
285,000.
So I guess in the big picture, 35,000.
yeah, and
It's
otherwise,
cheaper than replacing a better.
yeah, and it's actually in very good shape as well, other than that main drive.
What did you say was that 285?
And with that, I have to double check this. You start to price it out.
And then an additional item that fit under this section would be the paving repair on that street, meeting with the county and met with Ray and a couple other people as well. To put together a pricing, an estimate to do that work. Leasy Brothers has bid for the paving work for the town. And I'm trying to work with them under their bid that they did for January. Try to find the items that we can use and do the work underneath that bid without going out to bid again. Utilizing those good numbers that we have.
Right,
Um,
because we're using them on our paving projects.
Yeah, they're one of
We're not
the-
even done with phase 2. We're prepping phase 3 as Ray reported.
So, but I did able to get the county to agree to a smaller area repair, which is huge. New York State DOT has given us some guidance as well as far as the repair of the traffic signal. Which we had to cut through one of the signals when we were doing the repair.
Are you gonna put that on for a night contract? Try to have it done at night?
If not, try to do it one half at a time. Because if you're paving, it's a lot better than concrete, because if you pave it and allow it to cool, you can open it much quicker, it's traffic. Where concrete, you have to let it sit for, I think we did 3 days, and I was pushing it. But for paving, you can open it traffic within hours, I think.
That was all on the county.
Good, the mill, 1.5 inch, and remove the concrete with a mill all around the area that I pavement, a couple bits of pavement to blend it all together. So if, once I have pricing, it may require a resolution and may not. It's, you know, the bid items. to be-
It's already been, really around though, I think. Let me double check that, and just because it's outside of our planned budget for
Gotcha.
that, so yeah.
Sorry, sure, sure.
Uh, utility billing. I can put as an item, discussion of the water and sewer rates. I don't know if Jason had that. Like,
Yeah, so I thought it was important just to have an item on the agenda, at least, I guess, sort of to keep the place after the resolution that passed unanimously last month. Or last week, sorry. I think it's definitely important to note right now, that obviously the comptroller's office is gonna play, a role in any type of, adjusting or, research that we do into the structure. And obviously with Beth's imminent departure, I don't know, how much work we can really do. So I think it's important to have that on there as a placeholder to keep the discussion fresh and to keep it in mind. But I do think too, we probably have to wait a little while, a few weeks at least, for Brett's department transition and structure. Does anybody have anything to add? I mean, I do think it's important to keep the discussion going and to, I guess, look into the billing structure and reevaluate. Based on. Yeah,
Nobody's ever actually come in and asked me about the data or the models or anything through all that, so I've got a lot of information, data, modeling that was done, so.
I mean, I have, but I do definitely have a list of questions that we got after the resolution passed last week. So we're kind of getting the transition, I'm sure if should work on it, but if that's not that.
That's hard to know without having questions.
Okay. Reach out to this afternoon.
You know, I think that can help with what you can, but I think to your point earlier, it's gonna be hard to put in a lot of time with her, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least,
leaving August.
Well, the rest of the staff don't have the information,
Right.
so.
It's basically the controller's position.
It is,
Right.
yep.
and like I said, Bill, I mean, I do think that there's obviously gonna be a short transition period. So I wasn't sure really in the next couple of weeks how much we can do, but I'll reach out to that, some questions and take it from there.
next item is the 2024 spring, residential commercial reconciliation. This is going quite complicated because of some of the changes that were made as those went out. So this may take longer than normal to perform. And I have it as a tentative, but when Chris finishes it, then we have to look over our subject, look at it, verify the numbers. So we may or may not make it on this month. I don't want to rush it. So it's there as a tentative. If things go well, we're going to do it. If not, we're going to next month. Because it is a lot of work on Kathy and myself go through the numbers after just have some set eyes on it. I don't want to put Kathy office and then fine because we're trying to question it. So done. And then I write the fast. But I'll have it just left it as a tentative for now. Number 6, wastewater treatment plant. An update on the organic waste programs. Dan, I know you've been working with Arne.
Yep.
With-
Start bringing in some way waste. We did get approved to do a pilot of the way waste with DEC, and so we're going to be starting that pilot. We've been crafting all the chemistry of around the plant, so we've got good base data before bringing that in, and so for the next 2 weeks we'll have the first loads of way coming in on this pilot for 8 weeks. Monitor the digesters and health and, provide all this information to DEC and show them that, adverse impacts on water being the plant, all these things.
So that's great. Did they give us only an 8-week pilot, or was there a specific time for the pilot?
So we proposed to do a ramp up period of 8 weeks and then an additional 4 weeks of regular loadings for the pilot. So it's like 12 weeks. And then at that point at the end, prepare a report, discuss with them results of the pilot.
So when you're doing that, when you get to the 8 weeks, are you then gonna be able to give them the report? Here's what I'm just thinking out loud. We don't wanna have a start or stop, right? If we don't have to, right? If we've got a particular hauler that's bringing this and we get it and things are running well, will we just be able to continue on with it?
We're hoping that it goes to that point. They've indicated that they would like us to run what's called a mini pretreatment program, which would need to be approved through DEC, to bring in that waste. We're looking to see if that, to get approval on that. I'm actually meeting with the town of Colony on getting that program started.
Well, they even said though too, that based on what we find at the end of the pilot, what if we would need to modify our permit? So we could, if we, the way I took the conversation, we got to the end of the 8 weeks and we saw no major impact in the plant, they may or may not even require that, but putting the pretreatment plan in place opens us up for more opportunity in the future. Because having that, sort of blanket approval on all the different types of things that we would like to bring in, we would avoid having to do a pilot each time. Yeah.
My question, did they require this of other municipalities, right?
That's one thing that we're finding out is that other municipalities do have a mini pretreatment program. What we're doing is unique enough where we're bringing in the waste directly to the digesters and not the head of the plant is extremely unique. I mean, we're the only ones that do that. So
they don't know how to.
They don't have a program set up for what we're doing. And so
Right, because a lot of
the
the
best
places
thing that
they come
fits
in.
in. Yep, just in the main,
Yeah.
in the front door. Yep, at the front.
One thing we're doing too to try to speed this up is we're going to share our data live DEC as we go. We're setting up a Google sheet and DEC's office is going to have access to the results as we enter them in. So even though we're going to provide a summary report at the end, they're going to have all this data. Every time we get a data entered into our system, they'll see it. So they'll watch it progress. And if it's indicating an issue, they'll know before they get a report, or if they know it's going well, they won't be a shock. It helps speed this up.
We're working closely with DEC.
Yeah, they've been very
the whole way.
cooperative.
So
We have new people down there. It's been great.
that's really
All right, good.
working well.
We'll see also, we get this going.
What is with the ramp up?
So ramp up with 2 trucks for the first week.
Okay.
The second week, 4 trucks a week. And ramping up till after 7 or 8 weeks, we'll be up to the full 9.
Capacity, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll be.
Budget planning, just kind of working on those just to see where we might reasonably put that. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Next item, tentative resolution for changes to the heating system in the dewatering building where the belt press is. The existing system does not do well with the environment that's inside with the high moisture and the hydrogen sulfide. It's causing the system to corrode and goes down quite often. So we're trying to catch it with the winter so that we can have a new system in place. We've gotten. We've
met with Petriconi, got all the measurements to put in the quote together. They said this Friday they'll have it.
So based on how much that is and the available budget, we'll either have a resolution this month or in the next few months. We don't really necessarily need it now. But we don't want to wait the last minute where things have a chance to freeze in that building. Uh,
Okay.
Let's not put a number.
All right, Aaron,
We're changing from, a forced air system to a boiler system.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's totally a separate system.
Yeah.
It will be far less complicated than the system that was installed.
Yeah.
For that
makes
building.
sense.
Was that done on the upgrade?
Yes. It was extremely complicated and to the point where computer controllers were used and we just want to do the simple thermostat, keep the system. So less to break, more reliable.
Get Aiden on the phone.
The water treatment plant. So the Water District 3 pump house is that small brick building that you see on Balltown Road, sort of almost across from the firehouse. That pumps the water from our medium pressure zone up to our high pressure zone, the elevated tank that you can see from the road. The pumps there's two pumps in there. They both date from 1973, I believe. And the motors are from 1973. So they've run reliably since then. Obviously, they're not as efficient as they used to be. And technology now is much more efficient. One of the pumps is making quite a bit of noise and it's vibrating and we want to catch it before it fails. So I've got a price to do we got multiple quotes. The price to take out one of the pumps and motors and replace it with a new higher efficiency motor and pump. And it would actually help with surging our system too, because it's compatible with soft start where the old ones that go on and they start way too fast anyway. So the low quote is $34,870, and that includes labor and materials to do the install and also install some new a gantry system in the building, because right now I don't even want to say how that's taken out. I mean, when it's been accessed in the past, it's hooks on the ceiling and yanking and putting up extra supports. It's in 73 that was probably fine without before a lot of safety. Yeah, but this would include a new system that would then be used when we eventually do the same thing to pump under 2, but it would be in place less cost and more efficient. But I want to do the one that's making the most noise right now, take care of that. Because they run it, they alternate for the redundancy.
How long would that take? How long would that one pump be down?
I'm thinking within a day or 2.
Yeah, get it within a couple days.
Yeah, so they'll do all the work ahead of time and then they'll swap it out.
Longest time will be the lead time on the equipment.
Yeah, so
which is
they'll
probably
run, yeah,
4 to 6
So you got-
months, just to be able to.
Stuff for this.
they have soft starts. We install soft starts as part of the upgrade.
So all the electronics is there, it's current, it's new. We just need it.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes.
That's all I have. Are there any other items that you'd like to add?
Well, Matt, I guess I'll just repeat the update that we gave at the Highway Parks and Recreation Committee on planning projects that have a stormwater component. Any planning projects that have a stormwater component, Matt and Laura and Ray Smith have been staying in close contact just because stormwater impacts a variety of areas. So there are 2 projects that are currently going through the planning board that have a stormwater component. One is a proposed 2-lot subdivision at 929 Pierce Road. That's an area where the soil condition is pretty poor and there's been some drainage issues in that area. So this project is at the very earliest phase of the planning board's process. That's what's called the sketch plan phase. And stormwater has been identified as something that will need to be looked at very close. Just to bring that to everyone's attention. The second project is 1045 Palmer Ave. That's another proposed 2-lot subdivision. It's in an R2 zoning district part of the town where lots are typically 40 feet wide by about 100 feet deep or so. So again, stormwater will be looked at closely there, just again, because you're potentially adding another home with some more impervious surface in that area. And then we also just wanted to give a quick update on the GE Vernova project. That received planning board approval on July 8th, and they just got their building permit yesterday to begin construction of the building. So a lot of work was involved in that between the applicant's engineering firm, the TDE that we hired, Matt and his group, all working closely together and sharing their information and turning around a couple iterations of the design very quickly. So that was a great accomplishment. And there is a stormwater retention basin. There's a couple involved in that property at 2690 Balltown Road. Ultimately, it just goes and empties into the Mohawk River, so it doesn't have any impact on the rest of the town. But it was a very focused stormwater review project. Done quickly.
Back to that 929 Pierce, that seems to be more downstream to some of the other areas that we had I say trouble, but you know, residents coming in
Yeah,
talking about
it's
the
still
Pierce
pretty,
Road.
it's still pretty close, so that, yeah.
Where that other area was, like Whitehall Court, you know, where those houses backed up to Pierce there, right? We had some residents come in and talk about, you know, drainage problems there because there was some, you
Yeah.
know, those keyhole lots that were kind of built on in that area. And this house is, say, downstream. but
Yes,
it's
yeah,
not,
a little
you know,
bit.
The water goes that way.
Yeah,
Gotta watch everything.
yeah, it's just in the early stages, so yeah, they haven't gotten into that too much yet, but it's on the radar.
Mr. Legal, wants to ask a question.
No, to follow up, to go back to the water and sewer rate discussion. Just to ask a couple questions, and I'm not looking for answers today, but to help guide some of the fact finding. I just had a couple questions. I didn't know if you were already thinking about these or not. I understand from a couple board meetings ago, the comptroller gave us a number of 2179 for the sewer district 1 accounts. I know that there's probably a little bit of float to that number. It's not always the same. But my first general question is, I believe it was around 325 that came off of the operation and maintenance bill on the property tax for sewer district 1. And so in order to make that a revenue neutral recapture for the funding, my question is, was the 325 or thereabouts the same amount for all 2179 accounts? Or is there a difference in what some residents and sewer or businesses would have been having removed from the property tax bill? The reason why I'm asking this is we just did the straight math on it with the 325 times the 2179, we come up with about $708,000, which would have to be shifted from the property tax bill to the sewer 1 utility bill in order to make that whole again. So that was my question, if that number is about accurate or not. And I know you probably don't have the ability to answer that right now, but that was my question. If the 325 was across the board, pretty much for everyone, because that would tell us what we need to get back in the utility rates as a minimum in order to make those 2 accounts whole.
That would have also been tied to the budget for the year that had been on, and the budgets vary from year to year. So I'd have to look at the variance across the budget from year to year in addition to that. But I can tell you that the entirety of the operations and maintenance costs were taken off the tax bill. It was left as only the debt service, which again also varies year to year.
Yes, I know.
And so that's the only thing remaining on those tax bills at this point, because that's what the New York State law says it's supposed to be.
So I understand that so if we should generalize, we're probably in maybe the 700 to 750,000 range in order to balance those 2
So
out.
what I would recommend that you do to kind of see how those fluctuate over time is if you go on the town website, every single budget for the years is on there. So you can actually look at what the budget was for the different, funds. So whether it was the sewer one, the water, the sewer six, you can look at the total amount of those budgets and it's down there line by line. So you can compare what was actually on the expenditures to the revenues. And if you look at, you can look also, it shows actuals from previous years in addition to the budgeted. So you'll actually be able to see some of that, pretty straightforwardly, right on that budget line. As the funds were transferred from the tax bill and those operations and maintenance funds were pulled off and put specifically on this.
I was really just looking.
I mean, I don't know the numbers.
No,
off the top of my
I
head,
got you.
but
I just thought that would be the thing that when we start looking at.
So, and also the number of actual units changed significantly because as you recall, we had 4 different public hearings over the 2-year period to shift the properties that had been incorrectly assigned to sewer 1 into sewer 6. There were a number of different maps done and public hearings that shifted those. So that also changed the number of properties that were actually in sewer 1 by sewer 6. And you can see that go across the budget as well, because there was a time period where sewer 1 used to just pay a big chunk of money over to sewer 6 every year. And once we were able to put the properties into the correct sewer districts, that line was no longer on there. So you can see that transfer over time. So it was about a 2-year process, as Matt can speak to as well, of identifying the correct sewer districts for all the various properties. And then following the legal process with the public hearings to move those properties into the correct sewer district. And then to re-examine through this process, the throughput of each system, in addition to the budget considerations and the number of properties that were looked at.
Yep.
So you can see a lot of that if you look through the budgets. And the resolution, I can give you any of the resolutions you, if you
No, and
know which properties.
I'm not
shifted to.
challenging.
No,
Everything that you're
just
saying
so you
sounds-
can kind of see the numbers of properties that move, because sometimes that's helpful as well if you're.
Yeah.
trying to
I
consider.
think the number that you gave, 2179, is probably pretty close to, because that was only a month or 2 ago, so I figured you probably already did the reconciliation. My main question was if the 325 was about equal for all those accounts, we know what it was that we would need to recapture just in order to make it
But
revenue.
remember that number was prior to. So the old, when the operations and maintenance and the debt service were all lumped on the tax bill, there was a significantly different number of properties at that point in time. So it's like a double shift accounted for.
So that might be helpful.
That,
Just-
and that's where I'm saying that's all captured in those resolutions. All this is on, is available. It's publicly available information. And that's where I'm saying, if you give me a list of actual specific questions over time, I can pull the right data for you. So it's all documented. So,
But I just had one other, and again, it's only to drive the conversation. If you're able to do an update for what the actuals are for the expenditures in Water District 1, Sewer 1, and Sewer 6 as of, say, July 31st, so we can kind of get a handle on what the spending has been so far year to date versus what was in the 2024
So
adopted budget.
we-
And that kind of gives us an idea of if we're over or under what the projection is going to be for the year. And again, that may help drive the conversation to whether or not we need to recapture some additional revenue, or if there's some ability
Yeah.
to refine the rate design based on less of a demand on the revenue stream for the year.
Yeah, no, we do all that as part of the budget
Yeah.
process. So, yeah, at the end of every month, and all the board members get kind of progress on where we are in expenditures for all the lines for the entire budget every month. It's not exact because a lot of, depending on what the needs are, some of the expenditures, big expenditures like equipment, sometimes they're done, or like I know for highway, he tries to get those in right away because a lot of time there's a 2-3 year build on some of his trucks. And that can cause, at least we can get the money encumbered so that it's accounted for, even though sometimes it takes us a couple of years to spend it until the trucks come in. But in terms of the general operations and maintenance of the systems, yeah, we know where we are at any given time, and that's part of our look as we're doing the budget for next year. We literally project based on where we were at this point, what the actuals were, and any upcoming expectations for a given system. If there's something we know that it's going to need a major overhaul, and I will invite everybody. I always do come to the budget hearings. These things are discussed in detail at that, and we go over all these numbers. I've already started working with the department heads on all their departmental budgets. So the supervisor will have all that information here in a couple of weeks. And then it'll go up to the clerk's office and start that whole process for the fall. So
Thank
Yep.
you.
too easy.
I have a question. I have it for you, Jason. As the chair of this committee, where does the resolution that they unanimously passed stand? Because I didn't hear much about that when you hit the utility
Yeah, so
fee. Nothing was really said about that. So where does that stand about rolling those fees back? Where does that stand about looking at the formula that was used to design those rates, which I haven't seen? I mean, Beth, can you give us the formula that you used to,
So it's not
design
a
these rates?
formula. It's
Well,
actually a
whatever you call it.
mathematical model.
yeah, I know.
Well,
Okay. Now, can you just give us what it is, the mathematical model?
I don't quite understand your question. A
Well, you-
mathematical model is just something
Figured
I
out- Figured out those rates. What model did you use?
built the model.
You developed your own model.
I did, yeah, because
Oh,
I
okay.
actually know how to do that. I took a course in that years ago. In mathematical modeling of systems when I was at Cornell University. So I used the process for mathematically modeling systems that I was taught, and I've used in many locations to create and build
Okay.
this model. This was a fairly simple one. It was only an algebraic model. It wasn't a calculus-based model because the variables didn't require that.
Mhm.
But if you'd like to sit at my desk, I'd happily walk you through the model and explain it to you.
Okay, I was just curious again, though. I'm sorry,
so-
Jason.
it might have been walking, I'm not sure. With that resolution, I have a list of questions that I came up with after the meeting, after the resolution passed. I'm gonna email Beth some questions either today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. I'm going to work as soon as we leave here. And like I said, I don't know how much we can work through in the next couple of weeks. I'll Beth is still with us. But I'll definitely email some questions and then get the ball rolling and share that information.
Okay, was there any, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you
go
just-
ahead, you-
Was there any reason why, you didn't ask those questions here? Not, I know she can't answer them without doing research, but was there any reason why you didn't ask those questions while we were here?
I didn't bring it with me again, like I said earlier, with Beth, with her imminent departure, I wasn't really sure how much progress we'd be able to make today. Beth expressed that she is interested in taking a look at my questions and helping, so I'll get the information to her.
Okay,
Yeah, so, we had done a FOIL a couple months ago, get data, budget data on the system. And one of the line items in that FOIL, for each of the systems was property tax as a revenue item. And one of the things I noticed when I looked at that was that, well, I'll just take the water system, that about $1 million each year in revenue has come from that category, property tax. Is that strictly exactly what it says it is, real
Yeah.
property tax?
It really is. That's what
Okay.
the assessor actually sends over to the county to go on the real property tax.
Okay. So we've been supplementing each of the systems. Now sewer district 1 was always property tax, but sewer district 6 and the water system with
So
property
it's
tax.
not property tax. It's what goes on the property tax bill. So that it's supposed to only be the debt service. But previously to us going through this process, portions of the operations and maintenance costs, all of the operations and maintenance costs were on sewer 1, but a portion was also on the water and on sewer 6, which is improper. That is not the correct way to do that. So going forward, the property tax portion of each of these bills is only the debt service. So if you take a look
I
at
understand.
the expenditure lines and you look at the debt service, both the bond and the van debt service, total those, that is the number that goes on with the property tax bill.
Okay, cool. So then, when you do that transfer, all of the homes in sewer district 6, all the homes for the water systems, everybody should see a reduction in the property tax because now you're taking the expenses into.
Their debt services on the property tax. Now,
The
debt service
debt services
varies,
stay there, but
correct, but all the operations and maintenance costs stay at that.
you never come off the property.
It already has the last 2 years, and going forward, it'll stay off, but I will tell you that you'll have to look because the previous several budgets had taken all of the capital expenditures and they had been bonding for those in short-term rolling bonds, which is called a ban. So that's why you'll see ban and bond in terms of the debt service. Those are more expensive to pay off and those have been varying. This is the last budget, 2025 is the last budget that we're paying off short-term rolling bans in highway and general. There will be one more year of 2026's budget. We'll still have a couple left in the water and sewer funds, and then we won't have that portion. Those short-term rolling bans will no longer be on the debt service. Then it'll just be that longer-term bond, which are like the long 30-year bonds for, say, the sewer plant upgrade or whatnot. Those don't vary as widely as these short-term bans were varying. So it'll be a lot more steady in terms of the amount on the tax bill, and it'll be slowly decreasing over time until there's another large infrastructure project. For example, the water towers is one that I'm sure you've heard talked of. That's probably going to be 5 to 6 million. But that type of a project, you typically do the 30, sometimes you do a 50-year bond, and it's a smaller amount and over time, and we don't get all the fees that are associated with rolling things every year. So it's a better way to look at it long term when you're doing a big project like that.
I'd like to make one other comment. In looking at the foil, one thing that struck me as being very good was that Matt, you must be running a really good operation because your expenses have been pretty flat over the last 4 years. I just think that.
Thank you. I'd like to spend more, but yes. But there's always things that we can fix. I mean,
I've run these types of systems before, I know.
But, we work within our budget and we do the best we can.
And also, Matt, you're very, I have to say this, very accessible to residents when they call. Yeah, besides running a tight ship.
Try.
You do, you're extremely accessible when people call you. I've heard a lot of comments from residents. They're upset about the utility fee. They want something done, but they said you've been accessible. You tried to answer their questions and you've shown empathy. So thank you.
My only comment, it's very hard for us lay people to understand why there's such an increase, such a dramatic increase and no increase in use. My 2215 Knott Street went from like $300 a year to $2,300 a year with no increase in usage.
Your usage stayed the same. That doesn't sound right. Oh. Yeah,
It
that's
did.
why. Commercial.
So
So one
just
of the
commercial
things-
with no use
So
of
one of the
water.
things that we saw, and this is something that we work with the assessor's office on, is there were a lot of commercial properties that were being billed at the residential rate, which was incorrect.
Why
Yes.
incorrect? It's water. It's all water.
There are different rates that were set by
So
code.
commercial
in the town
gets,
that commercial properties, and the same as commercials pay a non-homestead tax rate. Homestead pay a homestead tax rate. Businesses pay a non-homestead tax rate. That's all set by the code years ago. And
why wasn't it used years ago?
that is a great question. There are many people in this town who have had the gift of very inexpensive utilities for commercial properties, which was not correct. And so a lot of what we did, and again, this goes back to those 4 different public hearings as we were shifting things into the correct water and sewer districts. We were also correcting where there were a number of commercial properties who had been charged residential rates for years incorrectly. So that was one of the things that, again, this process involved the assessor's office, it involved water and sewer, and it involved me doing a lot of math. And we all poured over stacks and stacks of data to make sure that things were done consistently moving forward. And we found a lot of inconsistencies and we tried to correct those to the best of our abilities.
I just have one question about commercial, though I don't have a commercial property. The owner of the Broken Inn has a restaurant in Schenectady now called The Horses. He's got one in Niskayuna. His water rates in Schenectady are very reasonable. His in Niskayuna skyrocketed. My question is this, because I did call up the city I had made some inquiries. Why is it in the city, even for residential, their water rates are much, much lower than ours? I know that they have it
not
on,
accurate. The city is unmetered. So
I know,
there-
that's, I was gonna say that. It's unmetered and they put it on their property. I used to live in Schenectady. It goes on their property tax.
quarterly.
I looked at some of my friends who live in Schenectady and their water rate is lower than mine. And my, so I'm just puzzled why the city and even Glenville, the town of Glenville is lower than ours. And why commercial property in Schenectady would be lower than now it is in Niskayuna.
Well, the city is not metered. so
It's not metered and it's.
No,
paid
it's not meter.
quarterly.
I know that. That's what I
And
said.
it's paid quarterly, so if you actually
Yeah.
look at the cumulative bill over the course of the year, it is not less than what we pay. In fact, it's about double than what Niskayuna pays for water. We actually looked into that when we did this, Matt, and I took a look at the rates. There was a sheet in the very first presentation I did that showed all the current local rates for all those surrounding municipalities where Niskayuna fell. So you're welcome to take a look at that. It's easy to pull off tax bills.
Hey, Beth, you brought up, I think, are three really great points right now, which I don't think this has really been vocalized well to the community. The first one is you had talked about, there's been some shifting between sewer district 1 and sewer district 6 between properties. And I don't think I ever really heard that over many months. I know there's been ancillary conversation, but that, to me, that's a really important point to bring out to the residents and the business owners. So knowing that there's a shift in the properties in either one of the sewer districts is obviously going to affect the revenues and the expenditures in those two districts. So that's important. And then you also just brought up differences between commercial rates and residential rates. And there probably should be some explanation to that. And then, and also that some entities, properties were paying a residential rate for years when they should have been paying a commercial rate. Now, I know some of this has been talked about tangentially, but I don't think it's really ever been used as to help explain part of the reason why these rates change so dramatically for some people. So I think those 2 points are really important, just to have good information being distributed to people, because when you just get a new bill
Yeah.
and you look at it and you say, what's happened here, but without, if you've done the research and you have that good background information, that's really helpful to try and at least explain, even if people are not happy with that
Right.
answer. The other thing is, and I just wanted to ask you if you could just confirm for me, under the previous rate design, sewer had a cap at 50,001 gallons. So if you were over the 50,001 gallons, and don't hold me to it, but the number was like 153.50 or something like that. That's correct, is it?
It did used to, I have no idea why. I've never seen that anywhere else.
Right, but that, again, that right
was
there
very
is
odd.
is an important point that has never been articulated to the community, because if you were a user of 75, 80,000, 100,000 gallons annually, you essentially got a freebie of 30 to 50,000 gallons. And while I have some issues with this rate design and how it played out, that is another reason why people are seeing an increase in their rates, because they're now being billed for sewer for excess gallons that are being used that they were never being billed for before. But that's, to my knowledge, it's never really been articulated to the residents and the business owners. And again, there's lots of working pieces to this puzzle here, but a lot of it is the communication piece and not listing out, we did it for this reason, this was an issue, that was an issue. And if there's been 300 properties, for example, that have shifted from sewer 1 to sewer 6, that's a pretty big point that should have been brought up, and it probably still should. So I'm just offering these as
To your
ideas.
point, there was a whole process and there were multiple public hearings, and in the very first informational, presentation that was given, whatever, a year and a half, 2 years ago now, all this was mentioned. But one of the problems is when you're dealing with something that's as technical as this, the presentation I started, I could stand up there for 5 hours and go into all the details, and it kept getting cut down and cut down and cut down to try to make it basically palatable and understandable to a lay person.
Yeah.
So a lot of your questions are absolutely excellent questions, and most people, when I try to start talking, because I'll tell you, I could talk this stuff all day. I love math, I love modeling, I will talk systems until your ears fall off. Seriously, anybody who wants to come to my office, I will bore you for hours. But it's exactly that. It would, for most people, they would be sound asleep snoring and probably miss 90% of what I was trying to tell them anyway. So it's a very difficult topic and very hard to convey in terms that people understand. And because there were several things that had been kind of just evolved over time from maybe minor things that somebody had missed, and then it snowballs over a period of time, trying to untangle all of that knot and clean up what we were doing, it was a significant process. And I could say that Eric and I and Matt and I and Christine down at the water plant, I went, thank God they all are very, very patient people, because I kept asking them for more data and more data. And well, what about this? And what about that? And have we looked at this? And we dug and dug and dug for quite a long time. So it was a very complicated process, and it was across multiple departments. And it takes a lot of time to do that and to untangle it in a way that then moving forward, it can be reproduced.
No,
And that's the one good thing, and why I love, I'll show anybody this model. This model is reproducible. We have tested it against dry years, wet years, and an average year. And then I've taken that, used the data I come up with, and had Chris backfeed it through the billing system and check that it works and it's consistent. It consistently works with different data points. So that was part of it too, was the testing of the model once we had the model, so that it doesn't matter if I go, the next person can pick up this model and use it to verify the rates and continue to make sure that we adjust them as needed and don't wait 10 years before we make an adjustment. I mean,
No, I
anything
understand
you
everything
like,
you
you
said.
gotta
and I-
incrementally is so much better than trying to do something after 10 years of not.
Talked about like at least 3 different things that are variables that have been in place for years. But my recommendation would be, because this rate design changed the numbers so significantly, that you can't fix it all at once, even though you recognize that there's multiple problems, that to try and correct this all at once within 1 or 2 billing cycles is too much too fast. And so it doesn't mean that you ignore those things, but that you approach it in a tiered way, in a phased-in approach. And I think that that's one of the things that this resolution may try to get to, that you want to try and get to the end of the road, but you can't do it too quickly, because there's multiple things for maybe years that's been going on that you've now identified, but making corrections to all of them at the same time is what caused the upheaval with the rate shock.
While I understand what you're saying, I would say that in order to do it truly correctly and have a model that will work going forward, there was no other way than to just break what was wrong and rebuild it. And I know that is not always what people want to hear, but sometimes doing the right thing is not the popular thing. And what really mattered as we were working through this is that we got, first of all, correct information that was reproducible and brought us up to the actual required legal standard by the state in terms of how we're billing, what we're putting on different parts of whether it's tax bill or rents. Those were our 2 priorities, were legal, requirements and meeting those, and then using correct data to get correct numbers. I don't know of a way we could have done that to phase it in differently. I will say that trying to communicate something like this has been absolutely difficult on many levels, and I wish that people were more involved all the time, other than just when something surprised them. Because if people had been coming and paying attention for 2 solid years to see all these public hearings and all these resolutions, I think there were about 18 of them between the 4 public hearings and shifting the various the sewer properties, that alone would illustrate that this is a huge undertaking. And that was foundational to even be able to then update the rates. So again, this is where trying to get public participation and interest in the boring parts of government it's important because this does affect all of our lives on a regular basis. And it's definitely to our benefit as citizens to be interested and involved in what's happening.
You know, I agree with you about it affecting all our lives, because it does. And a lot of people only wake up when something like this happens, and then they stay awake. They're not gonna go back to sleep on other issues. But you may not realize it, Beth, or the board may not realize it, or Jason may not realize it. But I know there are, I'd say, 6 members that I personally know in our community who cannot afford these water rates yearly and who had to have people pay it for them. They had to literally have people who felt bad and gave them the money. A family of 5 with a $600 water rate with this economy, they couldn't pay it. So someone else paid it for them out of generosity. So that's the bind we're in. And that's why we went to Jason put that resolution forward. And my hope is it's not just window dressing, because this issue is not going to go away. People are really, really upset, not for any other reason that between the taxes we pay here and then they got hit with this, it's extraordinary. And I know what you said about Schenectady. Yes, you pay 4 times a year your taxes and your water bill is in there. But still, there are businesses there that aren't paying what we're paying in Niskayuna. I mean, that's just a fact. I've asked some of them. And I don't know how, that's why there's a lot of confusion out there. But from a human aspect, you have people that can't do it. I'm not here because I couldn't pay mine. I'm not involved in this committee because paying that was going to set me back a month or 2. I'm here for those people who have to borrow money or put it on their credit cards to pay it.
And you'll recall that at the very first meeting we had on this as well, I made mention and gave information about the low income housing, LIHWP anyway. It's the LIWAP program at this state, which was basically to help people with their utility bills. Our town has been part of that while it existed, and we had the state paying some people's utility bills for them if they couldn't afford it themselves. The state has since cut that program. It was several people in our town who had used that program here that we had taken in those payments from. It no longer exists. That was a state program to assist, recognizing that statewide, especially being in the northeast part of the country, there are utility failures happening. It is very expensive to maintain old infrastructure. And the state has recognized that as well. As you look at this lead service inventory, there's a lot that needs to be dealt with in our aging infrastructure. And it is very, very expensive to repair and to maintain and then to actually operate these systems. As you see from everything on here of maps is a reso because it's extremely expensive to repair these things. And we need to be able to provide clean water to residents, and we need to be able to treat the sewage and not poison our rivers. So these are the things that are very important, I think, to all of us as a community, and we need to be able to maintain those. And unfortunately, when a utility rate doesn't change for 10 years, and yet every single thing we do to maintain those utilities increases in price, the rate eventually has to catch up with reality. And we just hit that wall. We got to the point in history where we couldn't keep the status quo going any longer. And I live here too. I pay the water and sewer bills also. It affected my family also. I am grateful that I can afford it. I grew up as a kid who couldn't. So I very deeply understand the concerns that people have. And I'm a math person. I understand how numbers work. So there is no fluff in these numbers. There is no, and as you noticed with Matt's budget, he works on a shoestring. We literally go down every year. We look at what has everything cost? What do you have to do? How much do we have to put in this line to make sure you can keep things running? That's how we budget. We literally go line by line through every single thing and figure out exactly what we need to keep these systems running. And then I did the math to say, okay, in order to keep these running, based on the throughputs we're seeing and the number of users and all this, and getting everybody into the right category, how do we make this work? And I made the rates exactly what they needed to be, not more, not less. And then I said to Matt, okay, we're gonna hold our budget and we're gonna hold here and let everything settle out and verify that these rates are correct and that they work. And from what we're seeing, they are correct and they work. And we need to keep the model so that over time, if they're looking like they're gonna need to shift something, they have a reproducible mathematical functionality that they can use to put the numbers in, plug them in and say, okay, based on this many users and this much throughput, and here's how much budget we have to cover, here's what we need to do with that.
You know, your point is well taken about low income people, but these people I'm talking about aren't low income. They're making six figures. And between their mortgages, the inflation to put food on the table for a family of 4 and 5, their credit card debt, a lot of people making large, six figures could not pay that $800 getting hit with it. So it's not just I'm not talking about people that are, really low income living in the apartments. I'm talking about people living in very nice neighborhoods in Niskayuna. It really hit them hard. And I think that's the problem. And that's why I just said that we hope that the resolution that Jason put on will not be window dressing, that we will get something out of that to resolve the problem. And you weren't here, Beth, when Joe Landry was here. You were here, Matt, when we had water meters outside, inside, I mean, and people were not reading them. They were estimating it. And, the town had to estimate it because the meters were inside. And so when the meters went outside, and were you here, Matt, when that happened?
But they're still inside, but they.
Yeah, no, but they were inside in the residential. They weren't outside, like in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods, like Alexis, where I live in the Orchard Park area. They were inside. I know, maybe you weren't here. Maybe it was Polly.
I was here.
But I want to explain what happened, man. People got their bill because suddenly they had to pay the actual amount of water they had used. And some people got hit with a $2,000 water bill. People were angry. But what happened is Joe called them all in. He met with every single one by one, and said, okay, this is a one-time shot. You're not going to be paying this water bill every time it comes out. And he put them on a plan. They paid, like, say, over a course of 6 or 8 months, they would pay an amount to the town.
So Linda, I don't mean to cut you off. I think what you're getting at here is sort of like a
No, that's
plan or
what we're getting at.
Yeah, and that is one of the questions I have for Beth, the legality, and if it's something we can possibly look at or research. So that's one of the questions. Like I said, I have.
Tell you that the controller's office does not have the capacity to do that. It would have to be through another department.
But we're not
So-
talking about just a payment plan for this time. I mean, because you're going to have to do payment plans for all the other water bills coming out too. We're looking more or less at trying to fix this so residents are not going to get hurt, because they're not going to accept this.
So
And they're
like
not
I-
accepting it now. I mean, let's be honest.
And like I said before, Linda, I have some questions for Beth. I'm gonna reach out to her in the next day or two. I think Beth is definitely willing to answer questions and talk to people. So I would encourage anyone that has more questions to email her or reach out to Beth and.
It should come from you actually, though, because you're on the board.
I mean, if you want to email me questions, then I can talk to Beth and.
Well, no, you should know. You said you have a list of
I
questions.
do, so I'll get back to you in the next couple of days and show you. But like I said, I would encourage anyone that has questions to email me or email Beth and.
Data systems and models all day long. It's actually a very nice model. I'm very proud of it. Quite frankly, it was a lot of work. And it's hard to find something that works with a lot of different variables and it took a lot of time and I think we did good work.
I understand, I see your point, and I understand that. I had to do a budget. Part of the budget. A large budget. All right, I wasn't the business manager, but you have to handle it. I understand that, but. Well, my point is, I don't want to waste my time or other people's time if this is going nowheres and we're gonna just end up where we are. That's all,
Well, I think-
I'm at.
And I think I'll reach out to you, Beth, the next day or so, and go over some stuff, and I'll share, information. With
I have
that,
a question. Why does this all have to be done at one time? Why is this have to be updated at one time? Okay, so you're in arrears. We've been in arrears for a long time. Why can't this be done slowly and methodically without saying, okay, now you need $2,000 instead of $300? You need to phase it in. You need different categories. These buildings that you're now charging as commercial, who usually have less bathrooms than a house does, also have apartments. So you have residential and commercial together. You lumped them all together as commercial. You could separate that.
Actually, I can't. That's all done through the assessor's office. I have zero control over that.
So we need to go to another department. We
She
need-
is correct. I'm on the Board of Assessment. No, that would not come out of Beth's office. That comes out of Eric's office. That is
All right.
correct.
All right, then we have more work to do because this is not equal. And it's not done, it's done equal in your book, but it's not done equal in the residence books or in the commercial books.
so yeah,
you're
we
just-
we can talk to Eric and get some more information on that also.
All right. Let's continue.
We will, definitely. All right, our next meeting, I don't think we have an exact date for it yet. Matt and I are gonna work out some scheduling conflicts. It'll be the first week in September, I would imagine. But, Aaron, as soon as we have the date, I'll get it to you so you can put on the calendar. And, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't, you,
So I just
You want
I saw your face.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.